Coming into the year, the Buffalo Sabres had some pretty big expectations. Coming within 1 point of the playoffs last season, they were poised to make a bigger push, and for a lot of people, they were expected to be a playoff team. But this year's proved to be another disappointment in a long line of disappointments for the Sabres franchise. And now outside the playoff picture again, where do the Sabres go from here? Is this core good enough to make the playoffs in the future? What do they need to do to be a playoff team next season? And is this Buffalo Sabres team cursed? Watch till the end because we're going to be breaking it all down right here, right now. And hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this every weekday all throughout the year. Now, we have a lot to talk about with the Sabres and their struggles this season, and we will get into them. But first, let's talk about today's sponsor in BetUS. BetUS is the best place to make daily NHL and sports bets. So with so much going on in the sports landscape right now, it is the best time to sign up. In both the US and Canada, BetUS is available with 24/7 payouts and 24/7 customer service. And with the NHL going on, you can bet on any game. Also, March Madness, you can bet on the start of the MLB season as well. So many possibilities, and even as well with the NCAA hockey tournament starting up, we got a bunch of really interesting matchups, and I actually got a four-legged parlay here going $10 to win 69. I'm going for Denver, Maine, BU, and Omaha to win today, and we'll see how that goes. And if you guys go in the description, sign up to BetUS, you'll get an 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,500. A great deal there and a great opportunity to start today with everything going on. And as well, if you guys DM me on Twitter that you've signed up to BetUS, we'll give you $25 in free BetUS credit. So that's also incredible. So again, go in the description and sign up to BetUS today, and thank you so much to BetUS for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's talk about this Buffalo Sabres franchise, just how disappointing this season has been, as well as how disappointing the future could be as well. This Buffalo Sabres franchise hasn't made the playoffs since 2011, and even though we've seen some recent improvement, technically, it hasn't really been all too successful. We saw last year just how much Buffalo exploded in a big way. A lot of players like Tage, Thompson really rising above and having career seasons and lifting Buffalo to playoff aspirations. And they, by the season's end, would be 1 point from the playoffs. Florida with 92 points and Buffalo with 91. And they just missed. They were 7-2-1 in their last 10, and it was a brutal defeat. But at the same time, there was a lot of hopes that Buffalo would be back in the same position at least next year and hopefully being able to get over that hump for the first time. And I don't think it was incredibly far-fetched with just how much that team was improving, how young they were, that they could take an even bigger next step. But there were still some major problems for me in the lineup, specifically on that defense. You have players like Cale Clay getting top pair minutes, Henry Jokiharju as well in the top four. And to me, for Buffalo, if there was any room for improvement, it was going to be on that defense, especially with Levi looking like a goaltender of the future. The defense needed some massive upgrades, and in the offseason, they attempted to fix it. The Sabres would actually go in free agency and sign a couple of defensemen, but the players they actually got weren't what I was expecting. First, they went out and signed Connor Clifton to a 3-year, $3.3 million deal, and considering that he was probably Boston's 7th best D last year, not even getting regular minutes in the playoffs, I thought he was a player that was negligible at best and would maybe as a third pairing guy be okay, but Buffalo was signing him to be a top 4 piece. And the same thing also went with Erik Johnson, which sure, the experience I think is great to have, and of course won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche, but the actual player on the ice that we are talking about here wasn't a good one. In 50 games, he didn't even get a single assist, and I know that's not his game, but defensively, he wasn't exactly putting up record numbers either, and would get shipped off for the Flyers, where he would also play pretty horribly so far, and it just wasn't the fix that I needed to see in Buffalo's defense to really be confident in them heading in. And then, of course, there was the concern from me about Devon Levi and how much they were going to ride him as a starter, because we saw at the end of last season just how good he was, a .905 save percentage in 7 games. But the problem was we have almost never seen a goaltender have success after jumping straight from the NCAA or Junior League to the NHL. All of these successful goaltenders have at least had a cup of coffee in the AHL or a full season in the AHL to really get some seasoning. But if Levi was going to be the starter for Buffalo, he wouldn't have had that, and to me, that was a major concern. And those questions lingered on and went into my standings predictions at the start of the preseason, and you could see very controversially, I had the Buffalo Sabres finishing 7th in the Atlantic, finishing with 89 points. And although my Atlantic division predictions weren't perfect, having Florida missing, having Ottawa in the playoffs, Buffalo missing was pretty spot on. And you can tell by the comments, it was a pretty controversial take. I kind of felt bad that I was so harsh and so cynical going into Buffalo's season, but I predicted them to have 89 points. They're on pace for 82 this year. They were somehow worse than I predicted. And trust me, I wanted to be on the Buffalo Sabres train. They were the most exciting team last season, by far. They were absolutely electric. And if they made an actual top 4 addition on the defense, I might have actually had them in a playoff spot. It was that razor thin for me. The problem was it was just so close, and I just saw Buffalo getting swept under the rug, and so far that's been the case. But now the question comes, with another wasted season by Buffalo, one that was actually a huge downgrade compared to last year, where does the Sabres franchise even go from here? The weird thing for me about Buffalo's future is that last year's problems are actually this year's strengths. I think especially in the forward group, you've seen a lot of players actually get a lot better defensively. Tage Thompson has definitely taken a big step on D. Dylan Cousins. You got players like Zach Benson and JJ Peterka who have always been good defensive players. And I think for Buffalo, the defense has actually become a little bit of a strength for them. And then you look at that offense. Last year, they had 5 different players higher than the 0.80 points per game. An absolutely electrifying offense that featured players like Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Alex Tuch playing unbelievably well. And then you go on to this season, and the only player that has had a points per game higher than 0.75 was the player they traded in Casey Mittelstadt. He's not even on the team anymore. Buffalo went from their highest scorer in Thompson having 94 points last year to their highest score most likely this year being on pace for 58 points. That drop-off is asinine. The biggest disappointment might actually be the power play as well. Last year, Buffalo ranked 9th in the league with a 23.4% rate. This year, they're all the way down to number 28. And they're at a 16.1% power play conversion, which is just insane. The drop off there in pretty much everything offensive has really just destroyed Buffalo's season. And it's really quite a shame because Ukka-Pekka Luukkonen has had an outstanding year, especially since the new year. And even though that game versus Ottawa was not good whatsoever, for the most part, Luukkonen has been a great goaltender for them. In 47 games, a 2.57 goals against average, a 911 save percentage. He's been the goaltender that they needed. And if that offense was just marginally better, if that power play was in the top half of the league, they'd be a playoff team right now. Now, when we look to this Sabres franchise, their future, what they can do this offseason to hopefully be a playoff team next year, I got a few suggestions. First, I think unfortunately the Sabres will have to fire Don Granato. I think this year has just been a disappointment in so many ways. You cannot bring him back next year. I don't care the philosophy he has. I don't care how well liked he is in the room. I don't care what he's gotten out of Tage Thompson in the past. It's become increasingly obvious that this Sabres team won't be complete enough under his time to be able to take that next step. He was a great developmental coach, taking them into that bigger position, bringing out a lot out of those younger players, but it's become increasingly obvious that Buffalo needs somebody that knows how to win to get the most out of the team entirely and not just one part of it. And to me, hiring somebody with a lot more experience, hiring somebody that can win in the playoffs is the most necessary thing. Buffalo cannot skimp out there. They cannot be cheap in their next head coaching hire because it is going to be the most important one over the last decade. And it sucks because I think Don Granato is the perfect developmental coach. For a team of younger players to get out of that losing mindset, Granato is perfect. I think the Sharks should be running to hire him if he ends up being fired, but to me, that is the first big step. Secondly, I still think they could use another top 4D. Even though their defense has improved this season, I think if they were to add another guy, it would be absolutely perfect. Get somebody on that right side to fill Jokiharju's spot. And even though, again, they've been fine, they've gotten the job done, I think they need somebody that can really push the defense, really make it into a good one in the future, an actually established defense that can get the job done. And to me, I think they're one top 4D away from making it happen. Now for Buffalo, if they don't want to trade for somebody, they actually are pretty lucky because there's a lot of good defensive free agents, especially on the right side, that I think could instantly pop into Buffalo's lineup and provide some pretty good results. First, you got Brett Pesce, who might cost quite a bit, but he's a pending UFA with the Canes, and obviously he's been a big part of that defense for a while. I think he's still pretty good offensively, even though the point totals don't pop out at you, and pretty decent on the defensive end too, but would be mostly a puck-moving transitional guy, which I think for Buffalo they could still use, even though they got a lot of guys like that. I also like Sean Walker in that position too, just loading up on players that can play out with the puck, that can really dominate possession. Sean Walker has been brilliant this year for both Philly and the Avs in that position, and I think especially if we're going for realistic options that can really boost the defensive side, I think Matt Roy would be an excellent addition. This is a guy that's been a really sturdy, really consistent D for the Kings over the past few years. likely wouldn't cost too much, likely around the $4 or $5 million range, but I think especially defensively could put up some massive numbers for Buffalo, whether he's on an Owen power pair potentially, if you want to go with Dahlin. They could go with a lot of different options here, but I think Roy is a really likely fit on that right side. Makes sense here. And to me, would be a much better signing than Connor Clifton. And hey, you could have Roy on that second pair, then have Clifton on that third pair, and have both players where they need to be. And I think that could work out pretty well. On top of getting a D, I think getting a veteran forward would be instrumental. There's a couple of free agents that I think could fit. Jordan Marchinook to me is the main one though, a player that can still play, will get you around 30 points, but strong defensively and absolutely brilliant locker room presence, especially with them trading Kyle Okposo at the deadline this year. Getting somebody that can, again, be on the older side of things, know where to be, know how to win, that to me is important. A Marchinook would be perfect. And then we go on to the third thing here that I think is especially important for Buffalo to target throughout this offseason, at the start of next season as well, and that is just their health. This last year has been a disaster for them, and even though I don't think they still would have made the playoffs if they were completely healthy, it would have been a lot closer. You, of course, had the big injury to Tage Thompson, which put him out for quite a bit this year, and he has missed a lot of games, 11 games if he ends up playing the rest of the year. You also have Jack Quinn, which was another big loss for them. He had a great rookie season and was poised for a great sophomore season, and in the games he's played, he's been pretty good. 12 points in 18 games, but has missed a big chunk of this year. And you also have Matthias Samuelsson, who's just looked not 100% throughout the entire year. Obviously, he's missed a lot of games, and even when he has played, he hasn't looked to his true self, and getting him especially back 100% on that defense on the bottom pair to me is absolutely critical. To me, there's so many things for Buffalo that could have gone a lot better. The health was a massive one, though, and hopefully next year, it'll be a lot more consistent. The good news, I think, for the Sabres is that I don't think they have to change too much with that fundamental core. They already have the guys locked in place, and I think, again, that improvement will happen next year. You'll likely see Levi back in the NHL after he's gotten this great taste in the AHL, looking fantastic, by the way, which is great to see. But I think these core guys are still going to be good enough to get them in the right spots. But I think filling out the roster with the right D, getting better health, and also getting the right coach under them that can really push them into the playoffs is the most necessary thing. But I don't think there's many sweeping changes that Buffalo has to make, which is a good sign, but they still need to put some work in the offseason to truly get themselves in that position. The Atlantic is not an easy division, man, and that's a big reason why I thought Montreal would still be down in the dumpster in this season, was just because of the teams they have to play. But you just look at how good this division is, how consistent it is from top to bottom, and just how many decent teams there are. It's just such a logjam, and to me, for Buffalo, if they're going to make a push, changes need to happen. They're going to have to push out a team like a Tampa Bay or push out a team like the Boston Bruins next year. A lot has to go right, but they need to assert themselves. They need to truly make big changes and big substantial ones, because last year's tiny adjustments obviously aren't working. I want to see the Sabres make the playoffs. I want to see what's best for them, and I want to see you guys, the Sabres fans out there, actually have some happiness for once. It has been 13 years since a playoff berth, and you guys deserve so much better than what your team has gone after. That's why I'm critical for this team, because I want to see them be electric again. I want to see them be the team that I think they can be with that core. They have so much talent, and it's about unlocking it, and this offseason will be huge for them. But let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about this Sabres roster? Do you think they'll be a playoff team next year? Do you keep Don Granato as head coach? If you don't, who do you want to see him be replaced by? I want to know all your thoughts down below on this Sabres franchise and what they look like going forward. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you guys enjoyed the breakdown today. And of course, share the video with all the hockey, all the Sabres fans you guys know online. And get, of course, click on this card for all of my training room content right in one place for you to binge for all your heart's content, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great hockey day, y'all, and goodbye.